Alright, it's time for some more React. We're rewriting Mike's project for his random family members construction site. And we are at the big payoff for this project, which is to get some clickable photo categories going so that this gallery can really start to sync. So let's look at the code. We have our page here that renders the array of photos. And there's a couple of things we could do. We could put our filter logic here, but that's a bad idea. We should really keep filters and thumbnails separate. I have a rule that I use when I'm doing stuff like this. I try to keep the filter separate from the thumbnails, separate from the movie. And by movie I mean like whether you're going to render one thumbnail really big or have it be a modal or whatever you want. But if you kind of follow that rule, keeping the filters, the thumbnails, and the movie separate, that's usually a good place to start. So this is the page, so we're going to need a container for these photos and a container for the filter. So let's start by just doing the filter. So we'll make a new component over here. We'll call it category filter. And it needs a friend, category filter.js. And we'll just copy this and paste. So obviously we don't need all this. So we're not going to need that. We are going to need, no, we don't need get photos. We are going to need connect. And this will be category filter.sense. Alright, that looks good. We're going to connect to photos. That's definitely true, because if you remember in our Redux store, we have absolutely nothing in our Redux store. Did we turn it off? We must have turned it off. I'll turn DevTools back on later. But in our Redux store, we were connecting to the photos, which we created in kind of a mock data store over here. And each one has a URL and a category. And the category is an array of stuff. And you could have more than one category, but that's that. So we're going to connect to the same thing in our category filter. And the props are the same. We don't need get photos. And we don't need to do anything on mount. So let's consider what this is doing real quick. So for the filter, what a good way to do filter components is to pass them like an on-click or an on-filter or like an on-change, something like that. Some handler that you're going to pass them that they'll do their thing with and then shoot back some data to the parent component. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. So we'll specify a prop. We'll call it handle, or we'll call it on-change. That's going to be a function. And then in the actual component itself, it's going to have a handle change for internal stuff. Right. And then in the actual markup, we probably just need a list. I mean, we could get it to be super fancy at some point, but I think more or less what we need is we need like a title, you know? We call this like the photo gallery. And then we need a container. And this will hold the category. So it could be category holder. And then we have to figure out a way to generate the categories. So what I think is a good way to do this is to map through the photos. And before we even do that, we should store like a category array here. So close category array. And actually, you know what? Let's do this photo mapping up here. All right, so we're going to make a blank category array. Nothing's in it. Then we're going to map through the photos. And do we need to do this on render each time? No, not necessarily, but we'll just keep it there for now. Actually, we should. Never mind. We should do this on render. Anyway, so we'll map through the categories. And then what we want to do is we want to check the category of the photo. And if it's in here already, don't do anything, otherwise put it in there. So we could be like except photos categories is an array. So we'd actually have to do this. Photo.category. Shut up, Alexa.
Take a look at the help section in your Alexa app.
She's still going. Okay. So we should map through the photo categories. So we'll go to photo.category.map. And that's going to be like this. So we could say if the category array dot index of category is greater than or equal to 0. So if it's already in the category array, I guess we should just do the affirmative here. So if it's less than 0. So if the category is not in the category array yet, let's put it there. We'll do category array dot push category. And otherwise, don't do anything. So what this should do is leave category array equal to all of the categories of photos, and that's what we want to render here. So we'll say category array dot map category, and the markup we want to turn probably is an A. Is it an A? Let's make it a div. And the div has the category in it. And that div is also going to need to do something on click. On click is a function. It's going to call our own handle change using the category. So that'll be fine for now. So this is the category. And we'll just log it here before we do anything else, just to make sure everything's wired up right and that we're seeing the right output. So that's okay for now. We're going to need a SAS file as well. We'll just make it blank. Okay, and then our blog needs to import it. So we'll import the category filter from, oh, this is actually in components, right? Yeah. So components, category filter. I think I did that right. Do I need to go up more? No, that's fine. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and render it right here. Category filter, and we know we're going to need that handle or that on change prop, right? So we know we're going to need this, but we don't have anything yet. So I want to leave it blank for now. We'll handle it later. Let's see what we get. Hopefully not a terrible error. Oh boy, we got something. What do we get? In category filter on line 48. We screwed up. Don't need a semicolon. There we go. All right. So let's see what this looks like. If it lets us. What do we get? Get photos and not defined? What are you talking about? Ah, this. Right. There we go. Cool. So we got photo gallery, bathrooms, homes, and when you click on them, we should have had something happen. No, something did happen. Handle change is not defined. Oh, we didn't give each object a key. Definitely want to do that. So these categories are unique, so we could key it by that. Cool. All right, so it said handle change. Oh, it should be this dot handle change. There you go. And bathrooms, homes. Sweet. Okay, so this is wired up correctly, but obviously it's not doing anything just yet. So how are we going to store which is the active category? And are we going to allow the user to click more than one category, or is only one active at the same time? Maybe there should be like an all option. So those are some things to consider for this particular piece. So I think what the best thing to do here really is to let the parent handle this, right? So all we have to do is send back to the parent component which category was clicked. And that's actually exactly what we're going to do. Remember how we passed an onChange prop into the filter? Well, this dot props dot onChange category. We don't even need to even use some fancy syntax. There you go. So all this is going to do is call the onChange prop passed into this function, and because of that, we better make damn sure that this is required. All right, and now we better actually make sure we pass it. And this can be this handle change, and then handle change is a function, takes a category. All right, now let's log it up at this level and make sure that it's coming. So we should see the exact same behavior, but now we're actually logging it from, I think, a different place. Yeah, logging it from a different place. Sure enough, we get bathrooms and we get homes from here now. Okay, so this is where we can actually do some fun stuff. So what we're going to want to do is store the active category in the state. To get the state going, we'll need to set up our constructor in our component. There's a number of different ways to set initial state. I usually just do it in the constructor because it allows you the most flexibility, but it's not always correct to do so. But it's fine for now. So we'll make an active category prop on here, and we'll call it all, right? So in the beginning, you can see all of the categories. And actually, we should make sure our category filter has that. So category array should start with all, right? So it should start with every category. All right, so this state is category all. Okay. And then we'll also want to deconstruct that here in our render method. We'll say that the active category is from state. And then we're going to modify this render function for the photos because we want to say, we still want to render the same stuff, right? We still want to be rendering all this. However, we only want to render it if the photos category is matched by the active category. So we want to say if photo.category.index of active category is greater than or equal to 0, then render it. Or better yet, what we can say is if it's less than 0, return null, and then we can just say return this after that, right? Because if it's not true, then we'll get through to this part, and we're home free to do the rendering. We should also add an or here, or an and. So we want to say, and also active category is not all, because if it's all, yeah, because if it's all, we want to continue anyway. So there we go. All right. So we have our render method set up, but we're still not doing anything here because what we have to do in our handle change is set state. That should be super easy. We'll just say this dot set state active category is going to be equal to the category. And that should be all we need. Please work. Oh. Oh. Now one of the nice things that's going on under the hood here is that React allows you to do this super fast. This is performant for almost an infinite number of images, which is why we like to use it. Angular, not so much. And also, all the other systems before React, pure JavaScript, when it does this, doesn't do it as effectively. So that's why this is one of the nicer things. But this is really cool. So we can now have clickable titles. We have all for all the photos, bathrooms for bathrooms and homes and all that. I'm assuming when Mike does this, he'll expand out this photo gallery to include some more pieces here. So this is pretty good. We're almost done with this part. The last thing I remember saying is that, see this, where we're rendering the photos? We want to do this in a separate component. We want to keep the filter separate from the thumbnails, separate from any fancy display. So let's go ahead and make another component for the, I guess, thumbnail gallery. We'll make a new file in there. This is going to have most of the same stuff, but we're not going to have the handle change. Get rid of that. We're going to get props and active category this time, like this. We're not going to need that. We're going to, I wish we would just do this automatically. I'm sure there's a way to do it, and I'm just too lazy to figure it out. Alright, so this is just going to render the photos. It's going to do the rendering piece for us. This is not for performance. Some of the stuff I've shown you is for performance. This is not. This is really just for code cleanliness and maintainability. We don't need the constructor in this area. Get photos we don't need. Active category is a string. We don't even need to connect. Oh, I guess we could connect, right? So this begs the question, do we want to pass photos through the thumbnail gallery through props, or do we want to connect? I choose generally to connect where possible, so I'm going to leave it that way. But that's not necessarily true. It's not necessarily the right way to do it. You know, actually, in this case, since we're going to be passing the active category through a prop, let's pass the photos through a prop too. So we don't need the connect method here. We don't need to import it up here either. And then the styles are obviously thumbnail gallery.sass. Do we have one of those? Nope, new one. Thumbnail gallery.sass. We don't need the filter, we don't need get photos, we don't need cloud. No, we do need cloud config. Okay, and this is thumbnail gallery. We don't need component and mount here. And I think that should be basically all we need. So thumbnail gallery is all set. Now instead of this, we can render thumbnail gallery and pass it photos and an active category. And that gives us, we also have to import it up here, don't forget. But once we do that, that gives us some super clean code. And then here's the thumbnail, and of course there's an error. What happened? Oh, we don't need this. Right, there's too many dots. Go up 1, up 2, up 3. I guess we have to go up 4. Yeah. Sweet. Alright, so those are all the photos I'm going to include in this particular project because I don't want to go through the nonsense of uploading them to Cloudinary, but this approach will work for really an infinite number of photos. And at this point it's really just about how are you going to style your gallery. Are you going to do the list like across, like so? Another thing to do is to like show an indicator on these, which one is active. So like if I were going to do that, I'd go back to the blog page, pass that active category prop in through here into the category filter. Of course, you want to specify it in prop types. And then what you can do nicely is that when you go to create these, you can give a class name to the div. And one of the great things about that CX module is that it supports passing an object instead of just a string. So you could say category div. It's always that class name. But it's only active if category is equal to the active category that it's been passed into its props, right? And in that way, you could, in your Sass, you could be like, all right, so the category div, I want that to have display inline block, but I only want active when it has both of these to be underlined. We need to have a little bit of spacing here, so we'll say margin right 10. Alright, so when you click these now, they'll be underlined. Right, and then you could change this to do anything you want, really. I mean, the world is your oyster when you can break it up into this, because you can just add whatever decoration you want on the active class, which is kind of the point, right? That's why we do this. So that's a lot of fun. You could add like animations for the underline. You do whatever you want. That's not what this particular video is about. Maybe a future one. We'll see. So I think that's pretty good for the filter. I would definitely do some, standard styling stuff here, but pretty good. So yeah, that just about does it for a clickable photo gallery. One of the things I love about React is that once you get the data set up and flowing really nicely, developing these components is just so great and a pleasure, honestly. And they wind up working great. Usually if you're banging your face against the wall with React, it's because you did something wrong and you should just start over, because none of these things are that big. They shouldn't be that big, and they aren't. So yeah. So that is the end of this video. I think we have a couple pages left to go to rewrite this particular page. Maybe I'll do those, maybe I won't, we'll see. We still have to do something about deployment for this particular project, so maybe we'll get there. But anyway, until then, hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you make sweet photo galleries of your own. Ta-ta!